So, what's your story? What's your story? But before we get into that, what have you done since video number 2? Last week or so, I sent you video 1, video 2, talking about the importance of your story. Now, if you're just joining the posse, you have no idea what I'm talking about. So there should be a link somewhere to video number 1 and or video number 2. But let me ask you this question, regardless of whether you saw the other videos, what's your story? Now, your story is the sum of not just what's happened in your life, but also those pivotal moments that have catapulted you to where you are today. Let me repeat that. Your story is the sum of not just what's happened in your life. So it's not a string of events or chronological instances. It's also those pivotal moments that have catapulted you to where you are today. Now, in the movies, we call these calls to greatness. In every movie, there are calls to greatness. There's calls for the characters to be better, to grow, to succeed. So when those things happen, when there are calls to greatness in a movie, if we're just going to use that as our analogy, as our setting, the character can either accept the call to greatness, they can either accept the call to be better spiritually, physically, in their skills, emotionally, or they can reject them. But every movie, every life has several calls to greatness. So when we accept or reject the call to greatness in our lives, it's usually because we're not spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, we're not ready. So just like the main characters in movies, we also have calls to greatness. And when we don't accept them, when we just ignore them, or when we don't rise to the occasion, it's not always that we don't want to be great, or we don't want to grow, or we don't want to be better. Sometimes it's because we're not spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, psychologically ready to accept the call to greatness. We have to take a journey. Now, I've written lots of screenplays, probably 40 screenplays. I've had movies optioned. I've sold television shows. And when you write a script for television or for the movies, that journey that the main character takes is called the hero's journey. Okay? It's called the hero's journey. Think about the movies that you love. I'll take one of mine, and it's called Tootsie. Tootsie is a movie about an out-of-work actor who can't get work as an actor, so he dresses up as a woman and lands a role on a soap opera. All right? That's the premise of Tootsie. A guy can't get work as an actor, so he dresses up as a woman and lands a role on a soap opera. Now, if you'll remember, in the previous video, I talked about external wants, what we want on the outside. And then I talk about those wants versus what our internal desires are. And sometimes these are our internal needs. So in the movie Tootsie, Dustin Hoffman is this out-of-work actor who dresses up like a woman and lands a role as a woman, of course, on the soap opera. His external want is to work. He wants to work. He wants to work. He wants a job. He wants to be able to pay for his living. He wants to survive. He needs money. That's his external want. His internal need is respect, not just as an actor, but as a man. His internal need is to take a journey where he's a guy who's extremely dishonest. He lies to women. He lies to everybody in his life. He lies about being a man versus being a woman. And he has a desire to transform as a man inside, right? So he has to go on this journey that looks like he's just trying to get work. But what he really needs is to be transformed as a man. All right? Now, the external wants, and we all have them, what we see, what people see us striving for. That's what we see the character doing. An external want is the journey that we see them physically taking. The internal need is what actually drives that character to pursue the external want. Does that make sense? So go back to my example of Dustin Hoffman in Tootsie. We see him on a journey of becoming an actress or an actor, whichever you prefer. And he is being successful. We see that. But over the course of the movie, as he's this man in he's a man in drag, basically, in this soap opera, we see his internal needs show up. He has a need to be more emotionally available. He has a need to be more honest. He has a need to be more open with the women he's going to be ultimately dating. He falls in love with an actress on the soap opera. So we see him taking the journey as an actor. That's external, but we also see this internal transformation that happens along that way. Now, think about you. Can you identify an early call to greatness? I want you to identify an early call to greatness. All right. In the movie Tootsie, Dustin Hoffman has a call to greatness, right? A call to grow, a call to be better. So he has an opportunity to tell the woman that he's fallen in love with on the soap opera that he's a man. That's a call to greatness. That's a call to change, a call to be honest, a call to be more than he is, to be better. But he can't accept it because he's not ready. He's not emotionally ready. He's not spiritually ready. But here's the other thing. He's afraid to tell her the truth because now he'll be exposed. He'll lose his money. He'll lose face. He will not have credibility, right? He can't answer this call to greatness yet. He's not ready. So I want you to think about an early call to greatness for you. What happened in your life that gave you the opportunity to go to a significantly higher level, professionally, spiritually, personally, and you didn't accept it? You weren't ready. You wanted it, but you weren't ready. I want you to go ahead and write 1 to 3 of those down right now. Think about an early call to greatness that you had that you rejected. All right. For me, it was at age 6, right? It's weird. It was at age 6 when the teacher at my elementary school called my mother. I was in the 1st grade, called my mother and said to the effect, "You got a special child. And we think this child should be promoted." They called it double promoted, triple promoted, quadruple promoted. "We think this child should be promoted to at least the 4th grade, the 3rd or the 4th grade." Wow, this is a serious call to greatness. So my mother talked to me about it. Didn't tell me a whole lot, but talked to me about it. I might be going to another school. I'm not going to be in the same class with my classmates. I'm going to a different grade. I didn't understand what all this meant, but this was a call to greatness. Now, instead of allowing them to skip me 3 grades, my mother only allowed them to skip me 1 grade. So I went from the 1st to the 2nd in a matter of a week. Now, this was a call to greatness that I had no control over, right? I couldn't make my mother let them promote me to the 4th grade, the 3rd or the 4th grade. So that decision that my mother made possibly may have set out a path of success or pattern of holding me back. Think about that. Maybe my mother, as the story goes, my mother didn't think a 6-year-old should be in classes with 8, 9-year-olds. And that's valid. That makes sense. But is it possible that decision set out a path of success for me where I was used to excelling beyond people who were my age? Or did it set me up for a pattern of holding myself back? I will let you guys sit with that. The point is, sometimes you make decisions. Sometimes you're impacted by the decisions that are made for you. Repeat that. Sometimes you make decisions for your life, but sometimes you're simply reacting or you're impacted by the decisions that are made for you. Now, in terms of my ability to go from the 1st to the 2nd grade to the 3rd to the 4th grade, I think there was some good and some negative in that. As a grown woman, now I think, Mom, why didn't you let them skip me to the 4th grade? That would have been so cool. I would have graduated when I was 14 years old. From high school when I was 14, that would have been so cool. That's my adult, grown, developed, mature brain. But when I go back to a mom who has a 6-year-old and thinking about having that 6-year-old in classrooms with people who are 2 or 3, maybe 4 years older than she is, I think that's probably a good decision by mom. Take calculated risk. Okay, we can go 1 grade, but we're not going to go 3 grades. All right, so sometimes you make decisions, but sometimes you're impacted by the decisions that are made for you. But back to story. People will connect with you based on your story. That could be your personal story. That could be your business story. People will connect with you based on the story. That's why this is so important. That's why, regardless of where you are in your business and developing your personal brand, that you spend some time building out your story, understanding your story. All right, so let's examine two types of stories. There's a personal brand story, and then there's a business story. Some people start their businesses as just an individual brand, right? So if you're a speaker, coach, consultant, expert, you may be building just a personal brand, even though your personal brand is the basis for your business. If you are starting a company from the start, where you start out with teammates, you have a CEO, CFO, you start out with a team of people, then you still need to tell the story of that business. So personal brands, as I said, may be for speakers, coaches, consultants, experts. The business brand may start out with the problem you discovered, the solution you created, the success you've achieved. All right, that's if you're building a company per se. The process is the same for both personal and business story. And I call this my SACAR. I used to call it SAR, but I expanded it because it made more sense, and you'll see that in a second. So SACAR stands for the situation, the action, the challenges, the awareness, and the results. That's how you build your story. The situation can be anything from the situation you grew up in, the situation you were born into, the action that you took to maybe try to answer the call, to get out of your situation, to better your situation. The challenges are the things that happened along the way of you answering that call to greatness. The A is for awareness. The things you became aware of, whether they were physical successes or epitomes, psychological epitomes or mental epitomes, or just the ways you became better, the things you learned about yourself. That's what awareness means. The things you learned about the world, the things you learned about your clients, the things they learned about using your processes. And then finally, the results that you got. That's how you put your story together. The situation, the action, the challenges, the awareness that you gain through going through the journey, and then the results, the things that you were actually, what happened as a result of taking this journey. So let's go through this a little bit slower. Situation, what happened? I'll give you an example. I'm just going to make up, this is going to be a fictitious story. A baby was dropped off on the doorstep of a family, 1975, 1985. After finding this out, this baby goes on a journey of trying to find their birth mother, their birth parents. The challenges this baby ran into was that there were no records. Nobody had any clue where this baby came from. So the challenges of getting to what this baby wants is figuring out who was the mom, who was the dad, what city did they live in. All kinds of challenges came up. What did you run into after you took action, after you accepted this call to greatness of going to find your mom or your dad? What did you run into? What obstacles? Awareness. What did you learn about you or anything else or anyone else that helped you move closer to finding this information, accepting the call to greatness? Well, this baby could have found out that not only was he dropped off, but this person who dropped him off had a history of dropping other babies off. And he found this out during the course of the adventure because of a birthmark. He was in class one day. He saw a birthmark. Someone had the same birthmark. All right. So those are the kinds of things in terms of awareness. And then the results. What happened after you answered the call to greatness? What happened after this baby decided he was going to find his birth parents? Ultimately, he finds her. Ultimately, he runs into the right person at the right time in the right city and finds his birth mother. And now they discover they have 3 or 4 brothers and sisters. They have siblings, and they all live within the 25-mile radius of one another. Okay, so that's a fictitious, a made up version of how to get ready to tell your story. But if you go back and replay this and listen to it, you can see how this story can be built to a phenomenal story that inspires people to answer their call to greatness. Now, the journey I just shared with you allows your audience, your students, your posse to connect not just to you, but to their story. That's what it's about, y'all. It's not necessarily just about you. Your story is yours. Your business story is yours because that's what you're living. But the reason you're telling this story, the reason you're on this journey is to have greater impact, to help other people. So let me repeat this. Your story is not just about you. If you tell it the right way, it allows the people who love you, following you, want to be like you, aspire to do what you're doing. It allows you them to connect to their story, their adventure, and their journey. Okay? That actually is StoryAde. And this is what I'll be teaching in my new masterclass. So if you're a personal or business brand, your success right now is predicated on your ability to use your story to transform lives, businesses, families, communities, the world. If folks feel that you can help move them to accept their call to action, you are more likely to succeed in your personal brand building or your business building. Let me repeat that. If folks believe that you can help them, because remember, it's about them. If you can help them accept their call to action, then guess what? By helping them, you in turn will succeed as a coach, as a speaker, as a consultant, as an expert, as a doctor, as a website service, as a website building service, as a business coach, whatever. If you can help people achieve what they need, then you will succeed. So the question is, are you ready to tell your story better? Are you ready to tell your story better? You may be already telling your story, but are you ready to tell it in a way that takes you to a completely different level? Are you ready to see a distinct difference in the way people respond to you? Do you have the courage to transform your family, your workplace, your community, your world? Then StoryAde is for you. It is a 2-part masterclass where I'll walk you through how to craft and tell your personal or brand business story. Part 1, what is my story? So you'll be walked through getting through the roadblocks that stop people from discovering what their true story is. And then part 2 is called story selling, where I'll share with you options for telling your story. Do you want to tell your story on a blog? Do you want to tell your story in a book? Do you need to tell your story via audio, like a podcast or daily audios? Do you want to tell your story through a video channel, like a YouTube or Vimeo channel? How do you sell your story so that more people are transformed? Your first class becomes available Thursday, and most of the classes have home fun in it. I don't call it homework. And then your final class is the following Thursday. So your class starts in a couple of days, depending on when you're watching this or reading this or listening to this. You'll have some home fun, and then the final master class will be the following Thursday. All right. So find the button on this page somewhere. Get registered now for StoryAde, and I will see you in the masterclass. Until then, go out there, make your move, make your mark, and make your difference.